in the snow. His house is gone, burned to ash in less than an hour. His 5 children were inside. But when the fire dies and the ashes cool, there are no bones, no teeth, no remains. Nothing human in the wreckage of his children's bedroom. A house fire cannot vaporize 5 small bodies. Science says it is impossible. And yet, the official report will close the case in 3 days. Faulty wiring, 5 dead. Move on. But George Sodder will not move on. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not for the next 24 years of his life. Because somewhere in the darkness of the Appalachian Mountains, somebody cut his phone line. Somebody moved his ladder. Somebody killed both his trucks. And somebody, 23 years later, will mail him a photograph of a son he was told had burned to death. This is the Sodder Children case. A fire that consumed everything except the truth. George Sodder arrived at Ellis Island in 1908. A 13-year-old boy from Sardinia. Alone, speaking no English. He clawed his way out of poverty with hands that never stopped moving. By the 1940s, in the mining town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, he had built an empire, a trucking company, a house on a hill, a wife, 10 children. But George had a reputation. He was the loudest anti-fascist voice in a town full of Italian immigrants. A man who hated Mussolini publicly, openly, dangerously. And in 1945, in that community, that kind of opinion made enemies. In the months before the fire, a stranger came to the door selling life insurance. George refused. The man's face hardened, and he said something George would never forget. "Your house is going to burn down, and your children are going to be destroyed." December 24th, 1945. By midnight, the Sodder home is silent. 9 children inside, the youngest 5 sleeping upstairs. 12:30 in the morning. The telephone rings. A woman's voice, unfamiliar, laughing, glasses clinking in the background. She asks for someone the family has never heard of. The line goes dead. George's wife walks back through the house, and she notices something wrong. The downstairs lights are still on. The curtains are open. The front door is unlocked. She locks it. She climbs back into bed. 20 minutes later, she hears it. A heavy object striking the roof, a rolling sound, like a rubber ball, across the ceiling above her head. She goes back to sleep. At 1:30 in the morning, smoke fills the room. She screams. George wakes. He grabs the baby. He shouts up the stairs. 2 older sons jump from their beds and escape. But the staircase to the second floor is already a wall of flame. 5 children remain trapped upstairs. George runs outside. He looks at the window. He sees no faces. He hears no screams. He runs to the ladder that has always been there. It is gone. He runs to his coal trucks, 2 of them. He can park one beneath the window. He can climb. He can save them. He turns the first key. Nothing. The second. Nothing. Both engines worked perfectly the day before. Both are dead. He sends his son, running to a neighbor to call the fire department. The neighbor picks up the phone. The line is dead. By the time the fire chief is finally notified, the house is gone, completely. George stands in the snow with bandaged arms and asks the only question that matters. "Where are my children?" The fire chief tells him the fire was so hot, it cremated them completely. George stares at the ashes, and he knows that this is a lie. He knows that a house fire burns at 1200 degrees. He knows that bone does not vaporize at 1200 degrees. A crematorium burns at over 1700 degrees for 90 minutes and still leaves fragments behind. The Sodder home burned for 45 minutes. There should have been 5 small bodies. There were none. The official investigation closes in days. George refuses to accept it. He begins to investigate himself, and the evidence he uncovers is staggering. A telephone repairman tells him the phone line was not burned. It was cut with a blade, 8 feet off the ground. The missing ladder is found weeks later, 60 feet from the house, tossed into an embankment, untouched by fire. A passerby reports seeing a man running from the property that night carrying a block and tackle, a device that could disable a vehicle's electrical system. A worker at a tourist stop 40 miles south says he served breakfast that Christmas morning to 5 children, matching the missing. Accompanied by 2 adults speaking Italian. Tense, silent, refusing to let the children speak. A hotel owner in Charleston comes forward. A week after the fire, 4 of the children stayed at his establishment, with 2 men and 2 women of Italian descent, hostile, hiding them. And then George finds the bus driver, a man who tells him that on the night of the fire, he saw balls of fire being thrown at the Sodder home. The same sound the family heard at 12:50 in the morning. That was not a rubber ball. That was an incendiary device. George mortgages his future, hires a private investigator. The investigator returns with a name, a man with ties to the Sicilian mafia, a man who had pressured George to join a local Italian-American business association, a man who had threatened him directly. The investigator follows the lead, and then he disappears. In 1952, George erects a billboard on Route 16. 5 faces, his missing children, aged with sketches. What was their fate? Kidnapped, murdered, or are they still alive? For 25 years, every driver entering Fayetteville sees that billboard. And then, in 1968, 23 years after the fire, a letter arrives. The postmark is from Kentucky. No return address. Inside is a single photograph. A young man, mid-20s, dark hair, strong jaw, a faint, knowing smile. On the back, in careful handwriting, Louis Sodder. I love Brother Frankie. Elil Boys, a 90,132. The young man bears an unmistakable resemblance to Louis, his son. 9 years old when he disappeared. 32 years old in 1968. The eyebrows are identical, the eyes, the mouth. George hires another investigator, sends him to Kentucky to trace the postmark. The investigator never reports back. He simply vanishes. George Sodder dies 1 year later, in 1969. He is buried with the certainty that his children did not die in the fire. He goes to his grave still searching. So, what really happened? Theory 1, the Mafia, a coordinated abduction designed to punish an anti-fascist who refused to bow. The sabotage, the Italian-speaking strangers, the disappearing investigators. This was not a fire. This was a hit. Theory 2, a cover-up. The children saw something they were never supposed to see. They were taken to silence them. The fire was set to destroy the evidence. Theory 3, the darkest possibility. The fire was never meant to kill them. It was meant to terrify George Sodder, to prove that a man could be reached in his own home on Christmas Eve. The abduction was the punishment, and somewhere in America, or Italy, or South America, 5 Sodder children grew up under new names, with no memory of the family that lost them. The billboard came down in 1989. The case has never been reopened. The photograph still exists, locked in a family safe, studied by descendants who will not show it to the public. And in a quiet cemetery in West Virginia, beneath 5 empty graves, 5 children are remembered, but not buried. So the question is yours. Did 5 children burn to death in a fire so hot it left no trace, defying the laws of physics? Or did somebody cut a phone line, move a ladder, kill 2 trucks, and steal 5 children into the night? Drop your theory in the comments. Mafia hit, cover-up, or something even darker. If you believe George Sodder was right, hit subscribe, because next week we are opening another case the official record wants you to forget.